got to always be ready if those two defenders step out.
And now both teams try to restrain their benches. As you see the left side of your picture, Rozier and Bledsoe get tangled up. Ojale and Brogdon quick to step between them. But this has been brewing, Mike, all the way back to game one, when Rozier clearly got the better of Bledsoe. You saw him.
The way that these games have been officiated. Think about. I'm not quite going to go. I'm just setting the table. I'm really trying to stay calm here, but the way that they've been officiated, they're very lucky that they haven't lost control of this series to the point where there's a fight on the floor. It's so bad. And, you know, if this game had taken place in the Palace between Indiana and Detroit, you know what would be happening right now. Yeah. And that's, I'm going to commend the Celtics on one hand, and I'm also going to blast them on another. And, you know, you kind of gave them that criticism, like you got to punch back. But right. I said a quarter and a half into game two before I turned the damn game off that it would be a miracle if Marcus Morris didn't throw a punch before this series was over. And he hasn't. And so that's where I'm going to give them a lot of props. And, you know, Marcus Smart, had he played since game one, probably would have had an ejection by now. And, you know, but it is sort of sad that they didn't fight back the same way that it was being dealt to them. And in that regard, you know, they kind of bear some of the responsibility, because part of me is feeling like maybe things would have gotten under control if the refs realized just how close they were to losing control of the game. But then there's this other side of me that's going to put on old friend Jim Metz's tinfoil hat. We'll get to that in a second. And John, here's what bothers me. I did turn the game off 1.5 quarters into game two, and there was no point in watching that game. It was clear the fix was in, just the way it started. And I get it. You know, you absolutely, when you're down in a series, you want to come out at home and you want to put that fight in. But Dellavedova got away with so much grabbing, so much pushing, so much hand checking in the initial minutes of that game, and then it just extended out to the rest of that team. And yet the Celtics were getting called for ticky-tack fouls. It wasn't even good basketball, John. I couldn't watch it. And it wasn't because the Celtics were losing. It was because it was bad basketball. The ball, it was not even enjoyable to watch. Now, of course, no comeback in that game for the Celtics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then you go over to game 4. The Celtics get down big early. Now, this right here is where I put on my tinfoil hat. Diagram of an absolute sham scam on you NBA fans, and especially me, who I actually feel pretty ashamed. Part of the reason I'm so bitter about it is the fact that I haven't caught on to this or didn't believe it or turned a blind eye to it. For how long have we been doing this show, John? It's 2018? 15 years?
Yeah,
15 years, maybe? Something like that?
Long time.
Long time. I've been watching longer than that. The fact that I didn't realize that the fix is in earlier is mind-numbing to me, because, I mean, think about it. Just think about it, John. What happens in the final 5-6 minutes of the game, right? It takes almost an hour to play. There's constant timeouts. There's replays, blah, 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 blah. And what happens during that time? You get to watch more commercials than you ever imagined. Just follow the money here. If the series ended in 4 or 5 games, teams don't get home games. How do teams make money? They make money when games go 7. It's good for the team and the drama and the suspense and the narrative that the NBA wants to tell you. But then the other thing is, what do most casual fans do? They wait until those last 6 minutes of the game to watch. And the NBA has miraculously found an amazing way to extend those last 6 minutes with instant replay and, you know, the way that the game ends. So they drag it out more and more and more every year. We talked to Mike Gorman about that last fall. And I mentioned that was one of my frustrations. And he agreed with us that the end of the game takes too long to finish. Well, guess what? That length of time is all about ads. So how do they get you to tune in at the end of the game, John? What's the best strategy? Well, you know they're not tuning in early. So give the casual fan permission not to watch. Stake a 20-point lead by calling an extremely uneven game. Let let the home team get way up, and then right around the middle of the third quarter, start planting those social media hooks to pull you back in. That's right. Hey, guess what? Celtics were down by 20 early. Now they're climbing back into the game. Oh, it's close. They've got it within 10. And slowly they pull you and they pull you back in right in time for, that's right, it's time for the commercial bonanza of excitement that you will experience at the end of the game. The last 6 minutes, that takes 45 minutes to finish. You will hear all about all the sponsors and advertisers. Follow the money. I feel duped, John. And I will tell you, I was sitting in the airport watching Game 4, and it's just happening all over again. And I couldn't take it. I walked away from the airport bar, and it didn't help that my flight was delayed 3 hours. Went and sat over by the terminal and basically blew up on Twitter, barfed all over Twitter. And guys like Byron Solomon, our good friend, and old friend Mike Fay are like, and I was tweeting and texting back and forth with CLNS media founder Nick Gelso, and they're all like, "Oh, your boy Jalen's going off." And honestly, John, I missed it. I didn't watch it. I couldn't take it. I just couldn't take it. I was not going to succumb to the fix. And I know I sound like Mike Munger. I know I sound like a Tim Donaghy apologist. I know, it's like harkening back to the days of JB and the conspiracy theory around the refs. But my whole line on this show for all these years, back when we used to do a live show and Mike used to call in, I always said, listen, the officials do not influence the outcome of the game. I'm still going to stand by that. They don't influence the outcome of the game as much as they influence the narrative of the game and the tone and how best to manufacture drama at the end and take as many series to 7 as possible. And quite frankly, I get it, but I feel duped now because I don't feel like I'm watching a real product anymore.
I don't even know where to take that. I mean,
think that was a 6-minute straight diatribe.
It was a diatribe. Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know if I'm ready to go how far with the conspiracy. I will say this. I think that the officiating in the Celtics series has been horrendous. Games 1 through
like the worst
5.
you've ever seen, right? The worst you've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is we've had a show after Game 7 of 2010 Finals, which was still probably the single most painful sports memory I can think of right now. That was as hard to take. Well, not even Perk. Look, Joey Crawford. I mean, Joey Crawford basically,
of course, but he fouled out. That's what I'm saying.
Gifting that series effectively to the Lakers in how he called that game. And we've seen it over and over and over again in the course of history, and how the NBA officials set a standard and then choose to break that standard over and over and over again. I think in this series, they're letting the Bucks be as physical as they want to be with the Celtics. And we've already seen Mook Morris has gotten slapped for it. Horford has said not much, but more than Al Horford usually would say about these things. And we've got a lot of young guys who are not going to get the calls because they're young guys. But it certainly seems as though there's a lot of young guys on the Bucks that are getting the benefit of the doubt, and the Celtics are not. So I can chalk it up as the Celtics are not getting the calls, the Bucks are. I can chalk it up as it's just bad officiating. I think both things can be true.
It's so blatant, though.
It's awful.
It's so blatant.
It should be better than this.
These are not ticky-tacky, like, questionable, I'm not so sure. And this is clutching, grabbing, and hand-checking to the chest.